Welcome to this podcast on philosophy and history. Today, we gather to analyze and reflect on a central question that has made philosophers and scientists throughout history think. What is meant in history and philosophy? To answer it, we will go through different periods. Ancient period where man was seen as a part of the cosmos. The Middle Ages, where his essence was understood from his relationship with God. Modernity, which defined him through reason and science, and contemporaneity, which opened the doors and made us doubt and suspect who we are. The philosophers of suspicion, Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Sigmund Freud, along with Charles Darwin, they invite us to distrust established ideas and to look at things more deeply, not just superficially. In this podcast, we will defend the thesis that the man cannot be defined from a single perspective, since we are many things body, soul, love, nature, and also doubt and change. First, let's start with the ancient period. In this period, human beings were defined above all as rational animals. According to Aristotle, man is by nature a political animal. This way of thinking connects man with reason, virtue, and community life in the polis. But I would like to know what our guests think. Well, let's start with the Darwin perspective.
Hello, and thanks you very much for inviting me for to this podcast. Eh, from Darwin's perspective, although I respect Aristotle's ideas, but I believe that human beings cannot be understood solely as rationals or political animals. In reality, we are the result of a long process of natural evolution. Our reason and our social life are not divine gift or exclusive traits, but rather adaptations that have allowed us to survive and develop as a species.
Thank you for your answer. Let's continue with Mark's perspective.
I would say that from Marx's point of view, the idea that man is mainly a rational or political being is incomplete. For him, man is above all a social and working being, shaped by the material conditions of his time. It is through labor that humans transform nature and, at the same time, transform themselves. Therefore, man cannot be understood apart from the economic and social structures in which he lives. History, for Marx, is not driven by pure ideas or reason, but by the struggle between social classes and the way people produce and survive.
Now is the turn of Nietzsche.
Nietzsche, in The Birth of Tragedy, didn't agree with the idea of humans as only rational beings. He said that we are also driven by instincts, passions, and chaos, what he called the Dionysian side of life. Unlike Darwin, who focused on survival, Nietzsche believed that life's value is in self overcoming. Personally, I agree. Sometimes we act more from emotion than logic, and those moments make us feel more alive, not just reasonable.
And to finish this first point, let's continue with Freud.
From my point of view, the philosophers of antiquity relied too much on reason. Aristotle said that man is a rational animal, but I believe that's only part of the truth. Beneath the reason lie unconscious forces, desires, fears, and impulses that truly guide our actions without us realizing it. So, even in those early times, human beings were not only rational, but also driven by inner conflicts they could not fully understand.
Thank you for your answers. Now let's move to the second point. The medieval period. During these centuries, man was understood mainly in relation to God and religion. Human life was seen as a journey towards salvation, and the meaning of existence depended on faith. As St. Augustine wrote, our hearts are rootless until they rest in you. This shows how people believed that only God could give peace and purpose to human beings. What do you think about this medieval vision of man and the way it shaped society? You will answer in the same order.
The medieval view of humanity placed it entirely in the hands of God, as if life only had meaning based on faith and salvation. From my perspective, this limited our understanding of who we really are. Human beings are not a special creation, but the result of a long evolutionary process. Our intelligence, morality, and capacity for coexistence arose as natural adaptations, not as divine gift. That is why I believe that understanding ourselves through science gives us a more realistic view of our existence.
From Marx's perspective, the medieval idea of a man centered on God reflects a form of alienation. People looked for meaning in heaven because their real lives on earth were full of suffering and inequality. For Marx, religion was a human creation that helped people accept their misery instead of changing it. He believed that men shouldn't look for salvation in another world, but work to transform this one through his own actions and labor.
In the Antichrist, Nietzsche said Christianity made people feel guilty for living. Instead of celebrating life, they wait for salvation. Unlike Marx, who saw religion as a tool of power, Nietzsche thought it was a sign of weakness, a way to escape reality. I partly agree. Faith can give meaning, but it shouldn't make us deny who we are or stop us from living fully.
During the Middle Ages, religion dominated human thought. I interpret that as a projection of humanity's need for protection, much like a child relationship with their father. God became that figure of authority, offering comfort but also imposing repression. For me, faith functioned as a collective illusion, a way to sati the fear and uncertainty while at the same time keeping human instincts under control.
Thank you for your answers. On the other hand, a revolution in the understanding of humans was brought about by the modern age. For the first time, people were seen as independent beings who could use science and reason to explain the world without solely depending on custom or faith. Descartes' well known statement, I think, therefore I am, encapsulated this new spirit. This demonstrates how the capacity for thought and thought was the primary characteristic that defined humans. However, this begs the crucial questions. Are we shaped by forces or other deeper factors? Or does the reason alone adequately describe what man is?
The more view emphasize reasons as what we defines human beings, and indisputable our ability to think differentiated us from many species. However, I believe we are not simply rational beings. Our behavior, our emotions, and even our ideas are profoundly influenced by evolution and by biological and social factors. Reason is just one more tool that nature developed to help us to survive. In that sense, human beings are understood not only by their minds, but by their evolutionary history and their connection with all living beings.
Marx would say that the modern age made an important step by freeing men from religion and giving value to reason. However, he would also criticize it for being too individualistic and idealistic. For Marx, man is not only a thinking mind, he is a material and social being. Our thoughts and ideas come from the real conditions in which we live and work. So reason alone cannot define what man is, because our consciousness is shaped by society, labor, and history.
Nietzsche rejected Descartes. I think, therefore I am. In Beyond God and Evil, he said life and instincts come first. We are will and desire, not pure reason, like Freud. He believed we're moved by hidden forces, but Nietzsche saw them as creative energy, not as something to express. And I feel that's true. Many of my choices come from passion, not logic. That's what makes life real.
In the modern age, men began to trust science and reason more than faith. I appreciate that progress, but I also know that the reason alone cannot explain everything. Behind every logical thought, there are unconscious motivations, repressed desires, dreams, and emotions that influence our choices. Even when we believe we are thinking rationally, we are still guided by what remains hidden within us.
Amazing answers. Let's go to the other point. Finally, in the contemporary period, the image of man has been questioned more radically than ever before. Existentialism, postmodernism, and of course, the philosophers of fiction have all put into doubt the idea that there can be a single or absolute truth about human nature. Instead, man is seen as a being in crisis, full of uncertainty, shaped by history, culture, and even unconscious forces. This period asks us to recognize not only our freedom, but also our fragility and our contradictions. So the question in this time is, in this time of so many doubts, how should we understand what it really means to be a human?
In this time of so many questions and doubts about what it means to be human, I believe we must return to our natural roots. Science shows us that human beings do not have a fixed essence, but are constantly changing and adapting. Our evolutionary history explains why we feel, think, and act the way we do. Accepting this does not take away our freedom, rather, it helps us better understand our limitations and possibilities. Being human then is being part of nature, but also having the capacity to reflect on our own origins and future.
In this contemporary view, Marx helps us understand that man has no fixed or eternal essence. What we are depends on the historical and social conditions we live in. He believed that human beings are often alienated, separated from their true nature because of the way society and labor are organized. Yet Marx also saw hope, since through collective action and social change, man can transform the world and himself. So to be human is not only to adopt or suffer, but also to create and transform reality.
In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche said, there's no fixed human nature. We must create ourselves. Unlike Marx or Freud, who saw humans determined by society or the unconscious, Nietzsche believed we become who we are by overcoming ourselves. For me, that means not being afraid of uncertainty. When I feel lost, it's helped me grow. Being human is about creating our own meaning.
In the contemporary world, my theory shows that human beings live in constant conflict between what they know and what they repress. We are divided beings ruled both by reason and by the conscious. Our identity is fragile, shaped by desires, fears, and memories we barely understand. To truly know ourselves, we must look inward and accept that part of our mind will always remain unknown.
Thank you for your answers. In conclusion, throughout history, man has been explained in many ways. For example, in ancient philosophy as a rational being, in medieval times as a servant of God, in the modern era as an autonomous subject, and in contemporary thought as a fragmented and questioned being. Each of these perspectives highlights an important aspect of what it means to be a human, but none of them on its own is sufficient to address all that we are. Our guests have shown us that man is at the same time history and social classes, as Marx says, a creator of new values, as Nietzsche says, a being driven by unconscious desires, as Freud shows, and a product of evolution, as Darwin explains. Together, these perspectives support our assertion that the essence of man is a process of change influenced by history, culture, nature, and even self-doubt. Thank you to listen this podcast.